Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us in another one of our Talk With series. And it is really my pleasure to be able to work with and introduce PMH Atwater, who will be talking about and presenting glimpses of beyond. Now, you actually see her here. She's a very happy, wonderful lady. Uh, She is one of the original researchers in the field of near-death studies, having begun her work in 1978. She has written 15 books on her findings along with her theory about transformations of consciousness, covering 40 years of work both with near-death experiences and those who had an intense spiritual transformation. This covers nearly 7,000 child and adult experiencers. The Big Book of Near-Death Experiences brought the entire field of near-death studies up to date worldwide and was featured in an online version of Newsweek magazine. Her latest, Dying to Know You, Proof of God in the Near-Death Experience, is a summary of experiencer voices speaking their word, their truth, what they learned. In 2005, she was awarded the Outstanding Service Award from the International Association for Near-Death Studies and the Lifelong Achievement Award from the National Association of Transpersonal Hypnotherapists, as well as an honorary PhD from a school in Sri Lanka. Her monthly newsletters are free to those who sign up on, and there's her web address if you want to get a lot more information about her and her books that you can see here. But with that, what I would like to do is turn this over to PMH. Okay, so it's all yours. Do you want me to start this? You want to say a few words first?
Yeah, you can go ahead and start it. What you're going to be seeing here today are 40 drawings done by child and adult near-death experiencers in 6 countries. On the bottom of each drawing, they'll just go on their own, one right after another. At the bottom of each drawing is the person's name, the age at which they died, and the cause of their death. So right now you're looking at Mary McKnight. She was 37 years old when this happened to her, 11-hour brain surgery. She died during surgery. And this is what she saw during her near-death experience. So you're going to see that with everyone. Now with the children, there's a number of child drawings in here as well. And as luck would have it, even though they're now adults, they were able to go back in their records, their drawers, their boxes, whatever, and they were able to find drawings they actually did after their near-death experience. So that all the children's drawings are real. they're not, they're not depictions. They're actually real. All of this was put together to sort of help illustrate the book Dying to Know You, Proof of God in the Near-Death Experience. That book I call the people's book. It's the people's book because it's their words. Their knowing, their voices. There's no other book like it in the field that consists or is a summary of the people's voices. Yes, there's a little bit of research in it, not much. There's a couple of cases in it, not many. It's their voices about what they saw and felt and came to learn about heaven and hell and life and death and all of these major issues. So, while these pictures go by, the drawings go by, I'd like to, again, just sort of talk about the book itself. That is to say what the book tells us. and 90 to 95% of all experiencers, and this isn't just me talking, this is known in the field, 90 to 95% of near-death experiencers come back absolutely in love of God, in love with God. And it's like God fills their life. No, not all of them use the word God. Some of them call it core. Some of them call it the higher guidance, or they have different names that they come up with to depict that higher guidance, that incredible allness, the creator from which we all come from. But the fact that the percentages are so high, and they come back knowing God, not believing in God. Belief implies doubt. They come back knowing God, that there is indeed a creator, intelligence, consciousness, whatever you want to call it, that we emanate from, that we come from. And many of them devote their lives to God. They change their occupation in some way to depict that idea of being more spiritual, being more one with God, being closer to God, maybe even filling out a mission of some kind, that idea of a job that they have to do, that there's a mission of some kind. This idea of a new gospel, and that gospel is forgiveness and compassion. Maleness sometimes is used, like God is Father, or he or him, but very seldom. It's almost as if the idea of maleness is more of a habit than an acknowledgement of what God really is. The God in a near-death experience is much, much bigger than the God in church, the God in your various books of various kinds. Much, 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 much bigger. Thomas Edison was convinced that the soul is made up of life units, microscopic particles. And he died before he could complete the machine that was used to detect them. And I tell you this, I share this with you because invariably, near-death experiencers talk about God in the sense of power. Power. Real power. Adults use the expression of that power is 1,000,000 times greater than the sun. Just that once you're in that kind of power, instantly you're fried, but there's no pain. So the idea of this immense burst of power and energy, you're fried, but there's no pain. And kids too, they talk about the whole universe as being one of great power. And it's almost as if the whole universe is breathing. All of creation is breathing. It's like there's life out there. The idea that life is only in a human body for a near-death experiencer is pure nonsense. The greater life on the other side of death is so huge that when we stumble and try to depict that life, it's like most people either don't believe us or think we're crazy. And that's one of the big things near-death experiencers face, is the idea that they're crazy, that there's something wrong with them when they start talking about being very real and very alive on the other side of death. There's, you know, when we're talking about that power, often depicts itself as light. And I've already said, you know, adults, it's, you know, maybe 10,000 times brighter than the sun, 1,000,000 times brighter than the sun. But kids, they talk about 3 lights. Adults do too, but mostly it's the kids. And the kids talk about this incredible light, a luminosity, a power, but it doesn't have any special color. It's a very piercing, incredibly powerful light. And then they talk about a dark light or a black light. You hear this often with kids. There's something about the black light or the dark light. Many times they'll depict it as maybe being, have purple tinges to it, some purple to it. This light is very loving, it's very comforting, it's very healing. It knows all things, and you're just very comfortable. You just feel very, it's almost like a womb experience. You feel very, very healed and whole within this light. And then the bright light or the white light. This light is very, this light knows all about you. You can talk to this light. You can converse with this light. You can't lie to it. No way. I mean, this light is just, you know, so powerful. And the kids are very specific about these lights. That sort of very luminous, piercing, powerful light. The kids call that God's light. And that very dark or black light often has purple in it. That's mother light. But and that that very brilliant white light, maybe have some gold tinges to it. That's father light. And they say, well, the father light and the mother light come from God's light. So God's light doesn't have any special color. It just has this incredible power. Again, you know, when we're talking about near-death experiences and we're talking about the other side, we're talking about power. We really are. And a great deal of power. You know, yeah, I'd like to depict very quickly just a couple of near-death experiences, sort of lay the groundwork here. A near-death experience, by the way, can happen to someone at any age. You're looking right now at John Leona, complications at birth. His happened inside his mother's vagina as he was being born. And that's what he saw inside his mother's vagina as he was being born. It can happen in the womb. It can happen during birth. It can happen as a baby, a toddler, you know, all the way up to people in their 90s and beyond. A near-death experience can happen to just anybody at any time. There are after effects. This is how you tell if it's genuine, the after effects. There's a pattern of physiological and psychological after effects. Always, always, always. Some are more intense than others. Sometimes you get the whole pattern. Sometimes you get just part of it. But it's just, you know, it's the after effects. I really look for after effects when I'm going after the genuineness of a near-death experience. Let me give you just one that's really, really brief. It happened in Portland, Oregon, the dark of the moon, October, late October. The man was driving outside of town. There were no particular houses. In fact, there weren't hardly any houses at all. Switchbacks in the road. It was nearly midnight. There had been sort of like a light rain um, that suddenly happened and then suddenly quit. And the dark of the moon, you know, he had no way to know really that that had created black ice. He did not see the ice on the road. He was scooting right along. He lost control of his car, slammed into a great big huge tree. And his words, he's now on top of the tree looking down. He sees that his right arm is cut off. Blood is everywhere. Steel is everywhere. And his choice was he wanted to save his body. So he looked around, and there were no houses close by, but over on a ridge to the right was a house. There was a light on in the upstairs right-hand, you know, window. So again, his words, he just went over there. I don't know how he went over there. He just was there outside the window looking in. And inside he saw a man in there. So he said he started jumping up and down and screaming, "There's been an accident. Call the police." And he repeated it again and again. "There's been an accident. Call the police." Well, the guy inside, he told the police when they finally got there, he said, you know, he said, fog doesn't jump up. He thought it was fog. He says, fog doesn't jump up and down. And he heard this loud voice in his ears, and he went right to the phone, called the police, reported the accident, searched the house for a flashlight, then was outside looking for the accident because he didn't know there was, I mean, he really didn't know. So he finally found the accident and was there with his flashlight to, you know, flash down the police and the ambulance when they got there. They got the guy to the hospital. He was blinded by the accident. This is a right-hand artist. They were not able to reattach his right arm, so he's now just left-handed. And he was in the hospital for 3 months. When he was about to get out, his sight suddenly came back, and he was able to see. He asked for a pen and paper, and with his left hand now, he drew a picture of the accident scene. They called in the police. They called in the guy in the house, and they both looked, and they all looked at the drawing and said it looked as if a photo, it was so real and so perfect, it looked as if a photo of the actual scene. So again, you know, how could he have seen this? How could he have done this? And of course, he was completely changed afterward, not just because he didn't have a right arm anymore, but he himself as an individual was totally changed. Let me just let me give you some figures from my own work. 21% of the people, you know, I have the world's largest research base, nearly 4,000 adults and children, close to 5,000 really. 21% had no discernible difference afterward. 60%, the changes were significant. 19%, the changes were so radical, it was as if they became another person. So that's 79% with radically or really substantial changes afterward. That 21% that reported no particular changes, as often as I could, I would meet with significant others. You know, this is a hallmark of my work. You know, I don't just interview people at all. I have sessions with them. I study them. Remember, I'm a cop's kid. I was raised in a police station, and my dad always said, you know, the body says more than the mouth does. So you're watching bodies, and you're very careful about the observational technique that you use. So I'm watching all these bodies, and as often as I could, I would get into the homes, talk to significant others, maybe the healthcare providers, maybe a boss, maybe a neighbor, whoever would talk to me. And I would find again and again and again with those people that say, no, there was nothing to it. It was like a dream. That their significant others, maybe their wife or their husband or their kids or whatever, would say, yeah, they really did change. And the changes were big. So, what I found is that there is no such thing as a near-death experiencer who is aware of how much they have changed for at least the first 5 to 7 years afterward. And it takes a good 7 to 10 years to integrate the experience. A lot of people say, well, I went to a psychic, or I went to a medium, or whatever, and I took these classes and I learned all these things and now I'm fine. Phony baloney. I studied these people. You might be better, but you have not integrated your experience. It takes a good 7 to 10 years to be able to do that. And the first 3 years, that's what I call the housetop. That's the housetop era where you're sitting on top of that house, and you just want to scream to everybody, God is and death isn't. People think you're really nuts, but you're absolutely convinced, convinced of this. And then the next 4 years, it really takes, you really apply yourself. You really try to learn how to speak like other people speak, or at least speak in a language other people can understand you, and do things that don't frighten other people. Maybe you're not as effusive or joyful, and you sort of tone down the energy a little bit so that you sort of can get along with people without scaring them, because, be able to handle that energy is something else, really. It's something else. For child experiencers, though, I said for adults, 7 to 10 years to integrate the experience. For a child, it's 20 to 40 years. 20 to 40 years. A child experiencer is not like an adult experiencer. Not at all. If you can possibly read my book, Near-Death Experiences, no, it's called The New Children and Near-Death Experiences. And now I'm now involved in taking another look at children, and this time I'm going after the little ones from the womb to the age of 5, just specializing on that. And it's just, well, look, folks, to a child, things are very, very different. They interpret things very, very differently. They're filled with challenges the average adult is not. They don't have a choice of parents and brothers and sisters. They don't have a choice of school. They don't have a choice of friends and playmates. It's very, very different for a child experiencer. It's just totally different. A different breed of cat. And let me talk just briefly here about the after effects. Just give you kind of an outline of the after effects. They're both physiological and psychological. Physiological, you don't hear much of that, but really that's big. Changes in brain structure, brain function, changes in the nervous system, the digestive system, changes in skin sensitivity. If you weren't psychic before, you come back psychic after. If you were psychic before, you come back very psychic after. This idea of being able to go through different worlds, different dimensions, that becomes a piece of cake. That's sort of like normal living. Synchronicity is just, that's normal. That's the way you live. And you sort of get used to that. The life flows. You yourself begin to flow. It's sort of like a different way of living, and being able to then somehow broach that, or meld that, or sort of integrate that into regular living, so you don't go around scaring everybody, and you don't scare yourself. It's still to this day, it's not uncommon for a near-death experiencer to be involuntarily committed to a psychiatric institution just because they are showing and living and, exhibiting the normal after effects of a near-death experience. We've talked a little bit about the physical one. Hey, electrical sensitivity. Notice I'm not wearing watches. Not possible. Electrical all kinds of sensitivities. Sensitive to taste, touch, texture, smell. You become very heightened in the way you're able to pick up the world and what's going on in the world. On the psychological side, certainly, loss of the fear of death. Yeah, you begin to realize that death is just a doorway you walk through. You becoming more charitable, more honest, more open, more loving. Many of them come back healers. Not all of them do. But most of them come back with a different desire of where they want to live, what they want to do for a living. They often will walk out of marriages. They often walk out on jobs. Hey, the average near-death experiencer will be, most of them, between 70 to 77%, well, I'll say 71 to 77% of near-death experiencers are divorced within about, maybe 5 to 7 years of their experience. Some of them hang on maybe for 10 years. And that's because, when the International Association of Near-Death Studies holds their big conferences, we have rooms and talks for the families and the spouses, because they don't understand what's going on. Bear in mind that the spouse, the family, they're praying for that individual to come back. They're very concerned that their loved one died or almost died. They want that individual back. They love them. They want them back. They don't want back some rewired model that they don't even know. Some remodeled version. They just don't have any knowledge of this individual. They want back the person they lost, not somebody else. And, that's why we spend so much time with the families, and that's why we spend so much time with the spouses, to help them realize that that this person is still who they are. They're just a different model of who they were. They've changed in significant ways. So we are often spend a lot of time with the families to help them adjust, to help them to be able to handle this and realize that the individual is still, the person that they can love. But that love is different. For the average near-death experiencer, every woman you see is your wife, your mother, your daughter, your aunt. Every man you see is your father, your brother, your husband, your uncle. And it's not because they can't tell people apart. It's because they truly, truly love everybody. Well, the family, your children, your spouses, they expect they expect themselves to be privy to you. In my own case, my daughter, Natalie, I have two daughters, one son. My daughter, Natalie, just got very, very upset. Put her hands on her hips, walked up to me one day in the kitchen and said, well, you're easier to talk to now than you used to be, but you're not mom, and I want mom back. Well, we looked for that lady for a decade and never did find her. I don't know what happened to her. She's just gone, poof. It's this idea of agape, of cosmic love, this idea of unconditional love. Look, folks, unconditional love means love without an object. Stop for a minute. Unconditional love, God's love, cosmic love, means love without an object. That, you have to sort of stop and say, wait a minute. That means I don't own you, I don't belong to you. It means love without an, you love everyone. And it really took my children a long time, decades, before they were really comfortable with the idea of mom loves all kids, not just me. But they got to that point where they could handle that. Some people are able to do that quicker than I did. Maybe I was a slow learner, I don't know, but it took a little while to my children to be comfortable with the fact that I just was at home with everybody. They weren't necessarily all that happy, and kids don't connect the dots. They really don't. We need a little help with our kids. And medical notes. Hey, I said it's physiological as well as psychological. Medical notes. After the typical experiencer, after a near-death experience, you have lower blood pressure. That's normal. All of a sudden, you're maybe 112 over 60. That's normal for me. Not this idea of 134, 130 over 80. I mean, forget that stuff. Or maybe I'm less than that. Maybe 98 over 50. And doctors get very alarmed, like there's something wrong with me. And here I am, this very active individual. I travel the world. I do lots of research. I mean, do I look like I'm suffering from low blood pressure syndrome? No way. So, it just sort of changes all of that for us. Less aging. Yeah. Woo, less aging. Less cortisol in the body, have slower response to stress, lower blood pressure. Yeah, less aging. Hey, in a couple of months, I'm 80. Yeah, I am. I'll be 80 in a couple of months. I hope with all this white hair, I don't look. But anyway, it's just like, how do you really look at this? Let me share a passage from Dying to Know You, Proof of God in the Near-Death Experience, because I think it's important to really see and feel like a typical near-death experiencer does. I'm going to have to hold up my glasses, sorry. That light is the very essence, the heart and soul, the all-consuming consummation of ecstatic ecstasy. It is indeed a million suns of compressed love, dissolving everything unto itself, annihilating thought and cell, vaporizing humanism and history into the one great brilliance of all that is, and all that ever was, and all that ever will be. You know the light is God. No one has to tell you. You know. You can no longer believe in God afterward, for belief implies doubt. There is no more doubt, none. You now know God, and you know who you are. A child of God, a cell in the greater body, an extension of the one force, an expression of the one mind. No more can you forget your identity or deny or ignore or pretend it away. There is one, and you are of the one. The light does this to you. It cradles your soul in the heart of its pulse beat, and it fills you with love shine. And you melt away as the you think you are, reforming as the you really are. And you are reborn because at last you remember. God as nameless presence, existent beyond what words can tell, a conscious intelligence, a creative principle so great that it envelops and permeates all levels, all things, all possibility, all potential, all aspects of creation, all belief systems. I mean, that's huge. And if you're going to talk about near-death experiences, be prepared for pre-birth events, birth trauma, abortions, and missing twins. It is not uncommon for a child you aborted to come back and talk to you during your near-death experience and get acquainted with you and want to know why you aborted them. This is common. And there's one case of that in the book, Dying to Know You, Proof of God in the Near-Death Experience. So all these kinds, and missing twins, all these kinds of events, one half of them remembered their birth, especially with child experiencers. One half could remember their birth. And in those cases where I could meet with mom, once in a while dad, but usually mom, sometimes an aunt, brother, sister, I did not find a single mistake. 1/3, get this, 1/3 of my child experiencers could remember in the womb, and that memory began at 7 months in utero. 7 months in utero is the time when doctors tell us the baby can feel pain and respond to pain as if a birth baby. Near-death research suggests that the brain is fully functional at that same time. And what I'm finding is that they get a hold of the big book of near-death experiences, because in there is a heading called Womb with a View. These little babies can see outside the womb. They can hear your thoughts. And they don't forget them. So, you know, when they're born, they're bringing this stuff back to you. And yeah, it can be a real shocker sometimes. Uh, yes, there's a heaven. Yes, there's a hell. Absolutely. Near-death experiencers talk about that. We have both. Don't get the idea that it's always heaven and it's always beautiful and it's always hunky-dory and honey and all that kind of stuff. We have the difficult experiences as well. In my research, 1 out of 7 had a more hellish or frightening experience. I truly believe that the numbers are much higher than that because, well, most people who have a darker or more frightening experience won't talk about it. They won't tell researchers. They won't tell hardly anybody. So people are going around saying it's rare, 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 and I'm going around saying it's just because people aren't talking about it. I truly feel that it might be closer to a third, but there's no way I can be sure about that or prove that in any kind of numbers. It's just my sense from what I've heard. But the numbers I can give you certainly are 1 out of 7 easily. We have, we have all kinds of experiences that we have. One of the things that I would like, do I have time to talk a little bit more and give a particular case?
Please do. Please do.
Okay. Because I'm talking about more than just the near-death experience. Because we have all kinds of experiences. We have the near-death experience, we have the near-death-like experience, we have the spiritual experience, we have Kundalini breakthroughs, we have numinous experiences, we have vision quests, Kundalini breakthroughs, on and on and on. And the way you can tell if they're intense enough is they will then exhibit pretty much of that pattern of psychological and philosophical near-death experiences. They'll depict then that full pattern. And that pattern applies across the field. So we're really talking about threshold experiences, which is that big number, that big word that includes all types of transformations of consciousness, no matter how caused, and the near-death experience slots into that. The reason we talk so much about the near-death experience is because it happens in the modern world where maybe 12 to 20% of them are in hospitals, so you've got machinery, you've got trained personnel. So that kind of satisfies the scientific need of our doctors and nurses and scientists to say, okay, now we can prove the person was dead, and what they're able to see afterward, we can trace that down. And by the way, most of them are able to do that. This idea that that the testimony of out-of-body experiences is few and far between is nonsense. Most of them I know were verified by third-party testimonials. So, look at the guy in Portland, Oregon, for instance. I mean, really. Let me just quickly go over the 4 major components or the 4 major elements that you find in a near-death experience. You can find just one of them, certainly, but they're the 4 major ones. Is the out-of-body experience, clearly around 60-65%, maybe higher. Adult and child will have an out-of-body experience. And these out-of-body experiences, by the way, are very clear, they're very vivid. They have things happen during them that you can check on later on. And, you know, again, I've discussed that. The second most common is the light. And we've talked about the 3 different types of light, but certainly the idea of the light. The third is is a greeter of some kind, whether that's grandma or granddad, whether that's a relative of some kind, whether it's a religious figure, whether it's an angel, or whether it's animals. We got lots of animals in these experiences. Children have a lot of birds and little animals in their experience. Adults seem to have larger animals, although a lot of adults will have birds too. I don't know why birds, but we get a lot of birds, dogs and cats, turtles, horses, lions, I mean, lots of animals. So this idea of just people, you're greeted by people, no, you can be greeted by animals as well. The fourth is the life review. And for most of us, well, for some, it's like flashbacks or the entering of a large room, and maybe there's a big book there called the, you know, a big book of your about you and all that you have ever done. Sometimes they walk into this huge, vast room where there's all kinds of shelves, top to bottom, and on each of the shelves are lots and lots and lots and lots of television sets, and all of them are on, and they're tuned to different aspects and parts of your life, and you pick which one you want to enter. Some of them are, it's like a movie. For some, it's parts of the life. For others, it's the entire life, from birth to death. Sometimes it can be from death to birth. It can go the other way. And sometimes they're difficult. Don't believe the fact that the person is always totally objective and they're looking at their life and you know, they're able to understand it better. Well, that's true in most cases, but it's not true in every case. I wish that every near-death experiencer, when they're talking about their experience, they would say, it's my understanding, or this is what I saw, rather than saying, this is true for everybody, because you don't know it's true for everybody. You have that sense, you have that feeling, maybe you were told that, but please admit that. Say you were told that. Don't come across as someone on a pedestal saying, you know, this is true for everybody, because it's not true for everybody. It's true for most people. So that life review can really be difficult. Difficult in the sense that you can go back through your life, certainly, relive things that happened that might have been difficult. Well, let me give you one of the really big ones. I was in Chicago. This was a guy, I'm going to say like he worked for the mafia. I don't know they really did, but it was that kind of thing. He did a lot of heavy work for a gang of some kind. That means murder. That means beating up people. That's, I mean, heavy. And he had a near-death experience. And during his near-death experience, he then was exposed to and felt all of the difficulty and pain that he ever caused anybody he hurt. So he had to feel that and go through that, plus he had to go through all of the pain and difficulty and horror that the relatives of that person went through too. So he got double duty. And when I met him, he was so traumatized by what he went through that he was serving soup to indigents in the bottom, in the basement of a soup kitchen. And he said, I'm doing the best I can to make back to the world, make it up to everyone else. All the harm and all the terrible things I did. I just want to pay back. I want to pay back. And he was doing the best he could to pay back. So I know in my own experience, you know, I had three in 3 months. I call it the heavenly sledgehammer effect. Whoa, was that rough. Yeah, these are not necessarily easy. And you know, we forget that most of these experiences come from violence or trauma. So you've got a body to rebuild afterward, and as well as, you know, dealing with what you experienced. And I had to relearn how to crawl, how to stand, how to walk, how to run, how to climb stairs, how to tell the difference between left and right, how to see properly, hear properly, and rebuild all my belief systems. So for a year, I was in intense exercises, you know, you name it, and I was doing it. I had to retake meditation. I'd been a meditation teacher for many, many years. I had to retake that. I've been a prize-winning cook. I had to relearn what food was, heating up food from a can, much less cooking food. I was tossing everything in my environment. I was tossing sheets out the window. I was tossing pots and pans out of the window because I didn't know what they were. I didn't know what they consisted of. I wanted to know what they really were. So I sent off to the makers of the major pots and pans, got their manufacturing specs and their metallurgical reports, and went to a lab in downtown Boise, Idaho, and had them tested. And then only did I decide what pots and pans I would use. I mean, I re-examined everything: soap, sheet, clothes, everything. I relearned everything from scratch. I really did. And then, well, you know, in my third near-death experience, I was told by what I call the voice like none other to be a researcher. I mean, folks, I was on my way to being a bank manager. I was taking classes from the American Banking Institute. I was going to be a bank manager because I was very unsatisfied with my life. I had been very, very active in metaphysical topics, spiritual topics, all these kinds of things. I had researched heavily and, I mean, seriously, and investigated and tested, oh gee, psychic phenomena, psychic abilities, spiritual transformations, what caused them, what the after effects were, what it was like, de-haunting houses. Yeah, I used to be a ghostbuster. I really did. Made the paper and, you know, the Idaho Statesman way back when. But anyway, very, very active in the field, and really reached a point where I felt like, well, it's that time in all of our lives, I suspect, when we reach that point where, you know, when the student is ready, the teacher comes. You know, when you reach that point where, yeah, you just feel like not that you're a know-it-all, but you just reach that point where you're really ready to try something new and something different and go further and go wherever. And I'd reached that point in my own life, and I was expecting a person. I was expecting a new teacher, a person, a body. Nope, I got death. Yeah, I got death. So death brought me to that different level. Sure did. I had to relearn everything from scratch, starting with crawling. You know, it's learn it all over again. And then in my third near-death experience, that's when the voice like none other spoke to me. And it said I was to become a researcher. It said, quote, test revelation. You are to do the research, one book for each death. Then it explained what it meant by that. Book one was not named. I have no idea what book one was. Probably Coming Back to Life, my first major book. I mean, it could have been that. But the second and third were very specific. The second was Future Memory. It was named by that voice. The third was a manual for developing humans. Future Memory has been out for a while. It's a labyrinth. I mean, really. Every sentence, every paragraph, every page is part of the math I used to create the labyrinth. Future Memory is a real labyrinth. You have to read it straight through, like you would walk through a sight labyrinth. You read through the book the same way. You can't skip pages or any of this stuff. You have to read it straight through. And if you do, it brings your consciousness up to the next highest level possible for you. The book is a brain changer. It is literally a psychotronic device. And I was shown how to do that by the voice like none other. And then a manual for developing humans just came out this year, April. And I was shown how to do that as well. It is a fifth dimensional format. There are 6 sections, 3 parts to each section: conscious, subconscious, superconscious. It contains all the basics for being a full human being. I mean, whoever taught you how to be a human being? Did you ever take that class? Was there ever a class like that? You know, becoming more spiritual is backward thinking. The goal is to become more fully human. That includes the spiritual, and it includes everything else. It's all that we can be. Did you know that in ancient times, Hugh was the sound of God? It was the name of God. Human meant God-man. Literally, by being fully human, we are gods in the making. Why don't we just say it? You know, it says it in the Bible. Let's just say the words. I think I'm, you know, I mean, we're at the end of the PowerPoint. Do you want me to say any more? I think I probably settled.
That was really great. Why don't we open the floor for questions? How does that sound?
What? You're kidding.
No, let's see if anybody wants to ask questions, comments. So you guys, at least some of you know how to turn on your mic, or you can put a question in the chat box. Don't be shy now. This is a rather rare opportunity.
Hello, Marty. This is Lila.
Hi, Lila. Good. Go ahead.
I won't be shy. So I am just so thrilled to listen to your talk, PMH. I really appreciate you speaking out. My father,
Obvious,
yes,
obviously, dear, you like rascals.
I are a rascal. I am a retired firefighter.
Ooh.
From the 1980s. So that's when I was hired in the 1980s. Anyway, I am pretty familiar with reading near-death experience accounts. My father studied them since the 1970s, the late 1970s, until his death a year ago. And he was 93 when he went, and he knew where he was going, and he went on his own terms. And he prepared us for 10 years, the last 10 years of his life. He prepared us, said he was done, but he hung on, and he hung on long enough to interest me and my sisters in reading near-death experience accounts. And I am just so thrilled. When you read that, I don't remember which account it was, it just brought tears to my eyes. I always cry when I read the stories.
Well, I've got a million of them, dear. I can tell you a lot of
them. So, and I am in the middle of your latest book.
Which one?
A Manual for Developing Humans.
Oh, you got the big one! Yay!
Yep. And it's fabulous. It's just fabulous. I love it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lila.
Sure.
Anybody else? Yeah, go ahead, Evelyn. Evelyn, I see your mic got turned on, but I can't hear you. Okay, let's see. Here's a question. Well, go ahead. John, you've got a mic, don't you? Why don't you just ask it? No mic today. Okay, so I'll read the question. The Kundalini experience was mentioned. Is this mentioned in your work? Any comments on the experience? Question mark. I ask because for those of us who have gone through it, there are almost zero resources for aid since it's so rare. The Kundalini experience.
I talk about it a lot in my various books, especially the first one, Coming Back to Life. I also talk about it, well, you know, anywhere where I'm talking about the after effects, I'm talking about Kundalini as well. Get on my website, www.pmhatwater.com. I think I might have some articles about it, but I'm not sure. I've had three Kundalini breakthroughs myself. I had it before I had my near-death experiences. And the first one was just, you know,
Can you tell us a little bit more? Tell us a little more at the beginning. A lot of people don't know what Kundalini experiences are. Give us a little more background.
Kundalini certainly is that energy that resides at the base of the spine. It's called the coiled serpent, or the idea of this incredible energy. And also the idea, certainly in ancient times and now as well, that as you grow, specifically as a child, a teenager, growing up as a young adult, that the Kundalini rises too. And that's the natural way. It begins to rise and empower and uplift and just make the body more and more mature, more what it's meant to be. So as you reach the older ages, then you have the full, complete Kundalini running up the spine, igniting all of the endocrine glands and the minor and major chakras, so that the body then matures and matures correctly. We in the Western Hemisphere have this kind of crazy notion that anything esoteric or energetic, especially on the energetic line, it applies only to sports or dancing or that kind of exertion. We don't have any knowledge or sense that as little children, we can start then to open up all of our centers. We become very psychic. We become very open. The various talents that we have begin to blossom and bloom. We begin to use naturally more of our mind. You know, the average human only accesses maybe 8 to 10% of the electromagnetic spectrum. The rest is either ultra or infrared to our senses, to our mind, to our ability to contact. And one of the things I've noticed in various kinds of transformations of consciousness, doesn't matter if it's Kundalini or whatever, near-death experiences or whatever, is that it returns us and opens us up to the natural way of maturing, which is Kundalini. This idea of Kundalini, this idea of that energy, that enlightened energy that we are born with, that it then is able to rise up the body normally and naturally, so that we mature as what I would call a full human being now, both spiritually, mentally, physically, you know, creatively on all levels. But some of these people who get these books, these various books, and various ideas, or maybe they're with various kinds of teachers or yoga teachers or whatever, and they learn exercises to awaken the Kundalini within you, hopefully slowly, so that, you know, we get sort of used to that and are able to control it. But many times, slow doesn't matter, it's fast. And of course, many of us want the fast route because, oh, I want to experience cosmic consciousness. You know, I want to get there quickly. And when you do that, folks, you can wind up in a mental hospital. Kundalini is nothing to fool with. You want to develop that and open that slowly. You want to mature with it. You want exercises to help you mature slowly with it, control it slowly, so that you get to that point where you're a more functioning human being on all levels. And certainly a manual for developing humans will help you in the sense of having that knowledge of what a full human being is. So we get to be more human. On my first one, I didn't know. I never heard of the word Kundalini. I didn't have a teacher. You know, it's really great if you have a teacher. It's really great if you know what it is. I didn't know. You know, it was long before I died, folks, way back in the 60s. You know, I told you I'm almost 80, so we're going back into the 60s. And I was attending a harp concert. And the strings were catgut strings. They weren't metal, they were catgut. So they were natural. I thought I'd never forget the name of the harpist, but I just did. Well, anyway, it was an evening program for Edgar Cayce people. And I belonged to an Edgar Cayce group then, and so I attended this harp concert. Well, his playing on those strings totally opened up all my centers, and the Kundalini just shot up and went right through the top of my head. And during the break, and I felt absolutely like I was in another world. And when I got up to walk, and I was walking into the kitchen, people spoke and looked at me and said, "You're not walking on the ground, you're elevated." Can you believe that? I was elevated. I wasn't walking on the ground. I was about 8 to 10 inches off the ground. And I walked in the kitchen and walked back and sat down. The rest of the conference, the rest of the harp music. And I was just in other worlds. I was everywhere. I was everybody. I was just, woohoo, did I have a big one? And when the concert was over, I went to get in my car to drive home. And I'll tell you, I was just not in this world. So I got in my car, and I was thinking, how am I going to get safely home? How am I going to do this? And I'd been trained before in psychic and esoteric studies that red is caution. Beware of red. I knew all about the different aspects of red, but there's an aspect of red that says caution. So when I would get to the various stoplights and stuff, if the light went red, I'd stop it. I'd slow down the car. and when it went green, then I would know to put my foot on the pedal, and I would pedal a little, get a little further. And so we were living in Boise, Idaho then, and we were on the second bench. So I was able to get up to the second bench. I was able to safely park my car in the driveway and turn it off and safely enter my home. Everybody else was asleep. It was late by then. And I went to the kitchen sink to get a glass of water. I thought maybe water would bring me down. And I looked into the window, and I saw my past lives. I saw all about me. I saw myself as a soul. It just, whew, there it all was. And I thought, oh my God, help me, God. What am I going to do? How do you turn it off? It had been turned on. How do you turn it off? So I drank as much water as I could. I went into bed. It took me 3 days to come down. It took me 3 days to come down to where I was a reasonable human being again. And then I did all the research and reading and asking questions that I possibly could. What was this that happened to me? And it was a Kundalini breakthrough. And after that, I took a yogini who had wonderful yoga classes, and she talked about Kundalini yoga, and there are various procedures in yoga where you can open up Kundalini, and she just shook her head. It's a wonder you survived. And it is, because it's dangerous. And I didn't know that. I didn't know anything. I just You know, it just scraped me off the ceiling, folks. Well, there wasn't any ceiling there. I mean, there was all these past lives and all these universes, and whoa, did I have a big one. So uh, we want to be kind of careful with Kundalini. Yes, there are books out on Kundalini. There is a network. I think it's the Kundalini Research Network. You might try Googling that. But there's a lot of material out on Kundalini. They do teach it. Various yogis and yoginis teach it. It's taught in various spiritual minded classes. Edgar Casey talked a lot about it. So, you know, you can have access to this kind of material if you want it. Most of those that I know about or talked to who had a full rapid rise of Kundalini like I did, wound up in a mental hospital.
Mm.
So I was one of the lucky ones.
Wow. Okay. Excellent. I'm going to start this series again just to have something on the screen. Well, it's been well. They've got you, but you won't be recorded in the final version, unfortunately. I have sort of, and maybe it's two things. The babies. I was really fascinated when you were talking about the babies in utero. It sounds like they're very psychic. I mean, they're able to see outside what we usually think of as their enclosure. So that's rather interesting. And then the other was the missing twins. I don't know if they're missing twins, but could you respond to both of those?
The phenomenon of missing twins is more common than we think. Um, I'm remiss to give you the percentages, but there's a huge lot of percentages of women who are impregnated and it winds up being twins. And very often that second baby is reabsorbed into the womb, reabsorbed in the mother's body. Maybe she didn't even know she ever had a twin. And many times when she does know, that twin dies long before birth. Sometimes it is actually born and is dead. Who's that great singer? Nothing but a hound dog. You know,
Elvis?
Elvis had a missing twin, and his twin died in the womb before he was born, and throughout his life, he talked to his twin. They had a relationship together in the womb, and the twin died. Elvis was born. But Elvis continued to have a very active life throughout his life with his twin. And there's whole, you know, missing twin societies. And
I see. So there's a psychic connection. A psychic connection continues.
Well, you know, when we talk about psychic, I tend to sort of get squeamish with that term because it's really nothing. The word psychic doesn't mean anything. If you are exhibiting all of your faculties, then you're psychic. I mean, it's not something you become, it's something you are. It's part of our survival arsenal that we were born with. You know, how do you suppose the caveman and the cave woman got along? Even our great grandfathers and great grandmothers. We've had this notion, this idea, this response within us, this ability within us, modernized out of us. But it's really part of our survival equipment as a human being. Anybody who's human is psychic. So I have a little, I get a little squeamish when we use the term psychic because it doesn't mean really what we think it means. All it means is you're more open. All it means is you can access more of the electromagnetic spectrum. All it means is that you're more human. So yes, the kids in the womb, of what we're finding out more and more, especially me, as I investigate this more and more, we're well, one of the people in the research base that I'm now working on, this womb to the age of 5, let's see, what is his exact words? It's something to the effect of, we're very mature in the womb. We know all things in the womb. We know in the womb. He says, I'm constantly amazed at how much we know in the womb. You know, it's hey, we're adults in the womb. And we begin to lose that. Many of them don't lose it, though, until after they're born. They don't begin to lose it until they're around their parents and around their brothers and sisters, and by the time they get to school. And this is one of the major handicaps that child near-death experiencers go through, is why isn't everybody else like me? Why doesn't everybody else remember what I remember? Why are they different? I'm normal. What's wrong with everybody else? So the child looks at it in that very different way. I'm normal. What's wrong with you?
Can you envision a world where most of the people would indeed not forget? Or do you think one of the reasons maybe we're here is to go through and remember, because that process makes it stronger in some fashion?
I have no doubt that Earth life is school. We're here to learn. And that arsenal of abilities we were born with helps us. So it is my hope that our children learn more about this, because it helps them to be a better human. There's a whole movement now in the United States. It's called the wisdom schools, where parents on their own are gathering together and starting up schools of their own, maybe Saturdays, Sundays, maybe after school. The kid then goes to the wisdom school, and they learn to be more open, more intuitive, more creative, more innovative, and they learn that that's normal and that the world really needs that. Let's get rid of the word psychic and use the word intuitive. The world needs that. We need our business leaders to be more intuitive, more creative, more open. we really need people to be more innovative and creative and intuitive,
Mm-hmm.
because the way the world is moving now, if you're not, you're going to go under. I mean, this is black and white real. So we've got that movement going on. We've got this incredible woman in North Carolina, www.psykids.com, Psy, P-S-I. So www.psykids.com. She has the best teaching skills that I know of for helping children, helping their parents to all grow through and learn more intuitive, creative, and imaginative skills. And she's fabulous. She's fabulous. So, you know, get on www.psykids.com. Wonderful way of doing it.
Let me ask you something, and maybe it's only half in jest. Looking at these pictures, these were drawn by the people at your request or some of them spontaneously, but they're so artistic. I mean, is that one of the things that tends to happen? You come back? Most of them are. They're quite good.
Some artistic, you know. My favorite is that one that's now, see, and that person isn't really an artist. It's just plain white paper in the background, and you've got all of these computer keys, like arrows and curves, and you know, and what that is, the individual, the woman, tried to depict that halo of angels that stood around her in her near-death experience. She was really horribly impaired by what happened to her, and she's not able to do anything except peck out a little bit on a computer. But she did that. She sat down at a computer and did these little arrows and all these U's and C's to depict that that halo of angels that were around her. And when I look at that, when I look at her drawing, it brings tears to my eyes, because I know what she went through to do that. So a lot of these, of course, there's John Leona.
When did he do this? This was a problem.
When he was all older.
So you met up with him, and yet he remembers it this way. Right, you said he remembered it from...
never forgot it. Yeah, never forgot. He had all of the characteristics, all of the after effects.
Yep.
And it caused him nothing but problems with his wife and his children, and on his job.
Yeah, I get that.
He suffered a great deal.
Yeah.
A great deal for that.
PMH, can you hear me? This is Evelyn. I've heard you a dozen times on Dreamland, but
really,
I never really grokked what you were saying until today.
Well, I don't know.
I want you to know that. I never really got it.
Oh.
I got it today, and that's partly because I've been immersed in this stuff now for about 3 months with this group, but I've been on a 30-year quest, because it was once I got rid of a violent husband and I started working on myself that my psychic abilities started getting so strong, and I knew stuff about people, and it scared me, and I went on a quest to figure out, when do I listen to it, you know, because it saved my life a couple of times, and it's like, okay, when do I ignore this, when do I listen to it? So I've been on a 30-year quest, and I'm still on that quest and I've been doing the remote viewing now with this group, but I know that I am a twin, and I I went through a very difficult birth, nearly died in 1947, and they brought, I didn't get coded, but I needed oxygen for a couple of hours, and then I was fine because, like you said, I was an old soul before I was born because I'd been stressed in utero the whole time. But my mom had a huge tumor and a hysterectomy, and I've been convinced for a long time that I had a twin. And I read that book, The Vanishing Twin Syndrome, and had 41 of the 50 things in that. And then psychics have told me even recently, even the name of my twin. So what you said about Elvis and everything you said during that time you were talking about that, I mean, why isn't everybody like me? I mean, that's it. I was never, I never fit of what everybody else was. And because I had this human feeling for everybody and nobody understood it. And so they would all walk on me and, and turn me into a victim because they were afraid of this humanness that I have. And to this day, people are either like me or they hate me. And I think I've always felt it's because of this humanness. So my question for you is, what order do I read these things? I've never read any of your stuff. I'm bad on that. And so what order do I read your books that to help me in this quest that I'm on? Do I just start with the newest one?
Right now, get the manual. A manual for developing humans. And its counterpart, which is future memory. You want those two right away.
Okay.
Now, if you want to better understand near-death experiences, then you want near-death experiences, the rest of the story, and you want the big book of near-death experiences. Those two.
I had a coworker told me in detail her NDE back in the early 70s when there was no name for it. Floating up on the ceiling, going out to the Crystal City. I mean, everything that's classic, she told me. And so I've believed in that sort of a thing because she told me what happened to her. She was the cook at our hospital. It had happened to her like 20 years before. And so I had no reason to disbelieve it. So I definitely know those happen.
You always want to go with your heart. Uh-huh. Whatever your heart leads you to do, that's what you do. Get on my website, www.pmhatwater.com. Go to the book section, see what feels right to you. And that's always the way you want to go. Honor yourself.
Okay, after the NDE ones, is there anything else that jumps out? You said those 2 NDE books. I'm writing as you talk.
Well, of course, Future Memory and A Manual for Developing Humans.
Yeah, I've got those written down too.
But there's lots and lots of books, so you want to get on my website and go eeny, meeny, miny, mo.
Is there any others by anybody else that you recommend?
That puts me in a quandary. And the reason it puts me in a quandary is this. All of your near-death experience books that were written by experiencers are very uplifting. It talks about that person's experience, and it gives you a lot of information that is very helpful and uplifting for the spirit. But it doesn't necessarily help you at all when it comes to understanding the process. Now, if you read a lot of the other experiencer researcher books, the doctors and the scientists, those tell you more about the phenomenon, but they don't tell you enough. The reason why my work is different, and it is different, You know, I'm one of the pioneers, been in the field since 1978. The reason my work is different is because I reject the scientific protocol. And this is why I object to it. It is perfect for a disease. It is perfect for understanding and getting a better notion of something physical. It is lousy for understanding and researching consciousness. It's somewhat helpful, but mostly lousy. And it is not that helpful, I don't think, in near-death experiences. And the reason I say that is it's highly biased. You look at the words in the questionnaires that they use, highly biased. Remember, I'm a cop's kid. I was raised in a police station. You never use a word in advance of the individual. Let's say there's an accident, there's 4 witnesses. You can go up to any of those 4 and you can say, did you see anything? You cannot use the word car until they use the word car. You cannot use the word crash until they use the word crash. You follow me? You use totally unbiased language. And the way you get more information is that magical word and the magical phrase, tell me more. Would you describe that for me, please? Oh, yeah, I'd like to know a little more. You know, just you know, detail that for me. You can't use any other words. No, never. You bias it. And none of them go deep enough. And the way you go deep certainly is the kind of research I do, but then you get in with the relatives or the significant others and you check and you cross-check. And with people in different cities, different states, different races, you keep checking and more and more and more. And there's a lot of information about the near-death experience that is not in near-death research books. It's just not in there. That I think is very important. I could go on and on and on about what isn't being said about the near-death experience.
What about other researchers in consciousness then? Do you, we have these, you know, we've been having these talks with different types of people, not just remote viewers, and of course there's many famous ones that are part of this group. What about, and when consciousness is something, Art Bell's been, you know, he's been in that quest for 30 years as well. So who do you go along with as far as consciousness studies in general, not just NDEs?
I've read a lot of them. I've spoken to a lot of them. Been friends with a lot of them. There isn't any one I would hold up as the one. I would say, you know, explore, because it's good to have a lot of different ideas, a lot of different notions. But where do I go for my information? I go 2 places. I go to the person themselves, and I listen and I observe and I watch, and then I test. And then I go to God. You know, I just let go of the whole thing. And I follow what I'm guided to do. But I've got to test it first, always got to test it first. The credo or that one phrase that I live my life by is that wonderful, wonderful Russian proverb that says, trust but verify. You know, trust but verify. And that's what I do. I trust but I verify. I do the work.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you. Other questions, comments? Oh,
Yeah,
Lynn,
I
I
have a
see you.
question.
Sure, go.
This is Lynn. Why do you think that psychic ability increases after an NDE?
I'm not a scientist, so I can't use scientific terms. It has a lot to do with the brain, the different parts of the brain that open up, that begin to flower, begin to bloom, begin to function. The brain begins to open up. The Kundalini begins to open up. The body begins to open up. We begin to open up. We begin to become more fully human. We become more of who we are. None of this is abstract. None of it. We become more of who we are.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Other questions?
Ellen Thomas Benedict that's on there now, he died in the last of March. Bless his heart. And interestingly enough, he died, I think, of lung cancer. Anyway, it is another type of cancer. But he left us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You probably do keep up a relationship with a lot of these people, and also you get close to them certainly while you're working with them. So, yeah.
Well, I try not to be that close because I want to be objective.
Okay.
But some of them have become friends over time. Yeah, some of them have. Mellon Thomas did.
Okay, let's see.
I
Yep.
have one more question.
Sure.
So you said that you think Earth is a school, and I hear this a lot in New Age philosophies, and we're here to learn things, but then what next? If we learn, I mean, do we get a passing grade? Where do we go? How do we graduate? What's the next level? That's always on my mind.
You're asking esoteric questions. And you're going to get all kinds of answers to that. My sense is that we move more fully into our own soul. So we leave the idea, I will leave the idea of being PMH Atwater because PMH Atwater is an idea. I have become what I have become because of that idea of who I am, who I thought I could be, who I learned, who I eventually moved into and became. But PMH Atwater is not who I am. My soul is who I am, the higher self. And the more I open up, the more I meld into and become one with my soul.
Does your soul learn from what you're learning here, and so it in fact grows as well?
Oh, certainly the soul grows.
I knew that was the answer, but I mean, I think that's the answer, part of the answer to the question. So we're learning here, and the soul indeed is learning as well.
The soul is not like the personality.
Right.
The soul is different from the personality. It thinks different. It perceives differently. But it's sort of like we feed our soul, if you will. Yeah, it's hard for me to articulate that because I feel like it makes me sound like I'm smarter than I am. I have this sense of my personality, you know, and I like who I am. I'm kind of scruffy. I am. I'm kind of scruffy. I make a lot of mistakes, and sometimes I get really scared. Like today, when I wasn't sure I could do this show, and I had to call in early so I could get everything done. And we, you know, it worked. Sometimes I get a little scared. Sometimes I get a little angry. Sometimes I get mad. Then I release it very quickly and dissolve it into the ethers. I do what I do because I know it's my job. It was a job I was given. That job in many ways has ended. It ended with the publication of a manual for developing humans. And I'd like to share that, if I could, a few brief moments here that we have left. That incredible energy that I was given in my near-death experiences, I was given the energy of atomic energy reactor. I was. Just huge amount of energies, and I needed that to do the research I did because it was almost inhuman. My average work week was about a 6.5-day work week, maybe 12 hours a day. And I did that for easily 30 years. And then I finally decided, well, I'll give myself a little break. I'll only work maybe a 5.5-day work week and 8 hours a day. So I did that. But still, wow, lots and lots of energy. People always say to me, where do you get your energy? I said, well, I died. That's where I got it from, dying. When I fulfilled that third near-death experience, you know, I was told to write a manual for developing humans. And then that voice came and guided me and helped me do it. When that manual went to the publisher and was printed, I mean, it was really out. That energy left. Poof, gone. I tire more now. I used to be an incredible singer, powerful voice. I can't sing anymore. I'm softer now. I get boohoo real easy. Say, I'll cry or whatever. And I feel more and more every day that I'm moving into presence. I'm not going to say God, I'm going to say presence. And the voice like none other is not a voice. I'm not kidding when I say it's not like any other. It's not an angel. It's not a guide or a guardian. It's not a religious figure. It's not a quantum this or a quantum that. It's not alien. It's not. You know, give me all these ideas of who you think it might have been, and it's not. It's not any of that. It's only been in the last couple of weeks that I've tried to figure out, well, what is it? And the only thing I can share with you is be where you are now. And you're in your room, and your room is filled with air. And you're looking to the other half of your room, and there's all that air there. And you don't really see it, but you know it's there. So I'm in my room, and suddenly the air folds over. and it folds and it folds and it folds. And as it's folding, another something comes in. I don't know whether to call it a plane or a dimension or a place. None of that feels right. Something else comes in. And that something else sort of leads and nudges and guides, and it's there and it helps me. Doesn't tell me what to do. It just guides. And it's right there. Just like my fingertips, I can feel it. And it guides. And when I go back to my 3 near-death experiences, if you ever want to read about those, it's called I Died 3 Times in 1977, The Complete Story. Innocent title. And it's on Amazon.com. It won't cost you very much. Very simple little book. I had my near-death experiences because of a rape. And my second near-death experience, the entire second near-death experience was in the void. I was in the void. My sense of that, whatever it is that sort of slides in after air is folded back, is the void. And the only thing that you can find in the void, there's a presence of all sound, all color, all people, all ages, or all activity, but there's nothing there. There's absolutely nothing in the void. It's empty. But the only thing in the void is that presence of shimmer. Shimmer. If you cook it all, if you deal it all with Jell-O, and you've done a Jell-O mold and you've unmolded the Jell-O, and just when you're just about ready to touch that mold, that bunch of Jell-O, you're just about ready to touch it, there's that presence and sense of shimmer. It's not a movement. It's a shimmer. That's what the void, that's the only thing in the void. And when that voice, whatever it was, came in, that was the only sensation, was shimmer. So that's all I can share with you. Hey, folks, we've done this a long time. I think you're bored out of your tree.
No, not at all. And I really do want to thank you so much for sharing so much information and so much about you. It was a real pleasure to hear about both of those things. So
I'm doing that now. I'm sharing me. I didn't do it before because I was a researcher.
Mhm.
And I'm still a researcher, but I'm just me.
Yeah.
And that's all I can do now, really, is just be me.
Well, that's wonderful. And you just be you. You're wonderful. You are just a real pleasure to watch and to listen to. And again, I thank you very much, PMH Atwater. And I will end this now. So you have a great.
Bye, everybody.
Right.
Bye.
So let me see
Bye-bye.
if I can. Wait, there we go.